not working.
Oh no. Okay. We have a quorum, Tate, if you'd like to get started. Are you able to, is your technology working okay?
Unfortunately, it's not, so
Okay.
I don't know if everybody can hear me, but I'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to today's meeting, to the technical working group. And 1 second, and I'm trying to get my computer here to work. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Appears that we do have a quorum, but let's just go ahead with the roll call. There we go. Recording has been started, so if we can go ahead, if I can ask staff to help me out with that.
Sure, I can, what we usually do, Tate, is we can do public comment, and then as we vote on the minutes, that's kind of a nice roll call if you'd like to just do it when we do the
Perfect.
minutes.
Let's just do that
Okay.
then. All right, so let me just go into item 1, public comments. Are there any public comments from any members of the public on an item that is not on today's agenda?
And I don't see any hands raised.
Great. And if there is anybody that does come late, if we can consider doing public comments at the end of the meeting, if anybody has any, and they're not able to raise their hand at this moment. Let's go ahead with any communication member comments.
See Brendan Reed has his hand up.
Hello. Just a quick, really public service announcement. Really exciting. We have broken ground on our new terminal project. A lot of construction going on, and the public service announcement part is parking is extremely limited. So please share with everyone and anyone. They can make reservations online prior to make sure that they get a parking spot. There's also MTS Bus 992, and we just launched before the new year a new free all-electric shuttle from Old Town to the terminal areas called the Sand Flyer. So just really encouraging folks to plan ahead before coming to the airport. Thank you.
Great, thank you. That's exciting stuff happening with Terminal 1. So definitely looking forward to that. Thanks for sharing that information with us. I also have an announcement, and I can happy to send this out to everybody or ask staff to do that. You may have already seen this. Institute for Local Government will be hosting a training for planning commissioners. Those are active commissioners that you have on your planning commission. It's going to be on June 17th. It's going to be at the downtown San Diego Library in East Village. And it's going to run from 9:30 until 4 o'clock. It's going to go over a number of issues that might be or should be interesting for your planning commissioners. Gives them an opportunity to dialogue and exchange with other commissioners from the county and different cities, depending on who's attending, but really to go over the role of a planning commissioner, how to work effectively, effective community engagement, CEQA basics, planning documents, and an understanding of also addressing local challenges and opportunities. So again, I'll send that information out to everybody if you haven't already seen that. I encourage you to provide that to your planning commissioners, since that might be something of interest for them. With that, are there any more communications from members of the working group? Not seeing any, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 2.
We had a brief Sandag announcement.
Okay.
From, I believe, Jenny. You're going to make a quick announcement on the smart growth grants?
Hi, everybody. So I want to give just a quick announcement. We are going to the Board of Directors tomorrow to ask for award of our Smart Growth Incentive Cycle 5 grants. Those are the planning grants that we put out in November. We're expecting to award, or asking to award 5 grants. So look for that tomorrow. And I think that was my only update to give at this time.
Great. And if I can ask, what item number is that on the agenda?
Let me see.
If you know offhand.
Item 8.
Item 8. Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
All right. Any other comments from either Sandex staff, members of the working group? Not seeing any. Let's move on to our next item, and that's approval of the meeting minutes for the March 10th, 2022 meeting. If I can have somebody make a motion to approve,
Martin,
either by
International
show
City
of
motion to
hands
approve.
or verbal. Great, thank you. National Cities made the motion. Can I have a second?
I'll second from Vista.
Vista's made a second. We have a motion. We have a second. Allison, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. For the city of Carlsbad, Jeff Murphy.
Yes.
For the city of Chula Vista, Laura Black.
Yes.
For the city of Coronado, Jesse Brown.
Yes.
For the county of San Diego, Rami Taleh.
Yes.
For city of Del Mar, I believe is absent. Let me just confirm that they haven't joined. Okay, city of Del Mar is absent. City of El Cajon.
No, Alvy, yes.
No, Alvy, thank you. City of Encinitas. I didn't see city of Encinitas here. I believe they are absent. City of Escondido, Adam Feinstone. Adam, looks like you're muted.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Okay, for the city of Imperial Beach, Megan Openshaw.
Yes.
The city of La Mesa is absent. Let me check. Okay, city of La Mesa is absent. City of Lemon Grove, also absent. City of National City, Martin Reeder.
Aye.
Thank you. City of Oceanside, Darlene Nicandro.
Yes.
Thank you. City of Poway. I believe we had someone join with a Poway name, but I don't know. Oh, here we go. Is this Dave?
Hi, everyone. Yes.
Okay. Is this Dave from Poway? I'm
Yeah,
just gonna-
it is.
Okay, I'm gonna promote you. Sorry.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Sure who you were, so we'll promote you now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, City of San Diego, Tate Galloway.
Yes.
City of San Marcos, Joe Faraci.
Yes.
For the city of Santee, Michael Coyne.
Yes.
City of Solana Beach, I believe is absent. And City of Vista, John Conley.
Yes.
All right, so that passes unanimously with those members present.
Great. All right, thank you. Let's move on to item 3. And this is the on-call sustainable communities consultant services. Staff presenting on the item is going to be Brittany Huth. Brittany will provide an overview of the selected on-call sustainable community firms that will provide a variety of planning services in support of the Housing Accelerated Program and the implementation of the 2021 regional plan will be available for local jurisdictions to use. if we can go ahead and get that presentation, then we'll open it up to member comments and questions, and then ask for public comments following. All right, it's all yours, Brittany.
Thank you and good afternoon. My name is Brittany Huth and I'm with Sandag's Contracts Department. This presentation, as Tate mentioned, is to share about a recent solicitation Sandag conducted for on-call sustainable communities consulting services. This solicitation was issued as a joint procurement on behalf of Sandag and our local jurisdictions. Next slide, please. The purpose of this solicitation is to establish a bench of qualified firms for each of the 6 disciplines and categories of service. Local jurisdictions can access this on-call to support their housing and sustainable communities projects. The solicitation is intended to be a resource to the jurisdictions that have been or will be awarded HAP funding through a competitive grant process. And it will also serve as a resource to Sandag staff in the implementation of the regional plan. The total solicitation value or maximum amount that can be awarded to the on-call firms by Sandag and the jurisdictions is $25 million over the course of a 5-year term. These contracts will be set up as task order-based contracts, which will require Sandag and the jurisdictions to issue task order solicitations to the on-call firms in their respective categories. Next slide, please, Nikki. In regards to the 6 categories of service that we solicited proposals, we have category 1, integrated land use planning, urban design, and land use policy. Category 2, integrated community development finance. Category 3, equity analysis, training, and technical assistance. Category 4, grant writing. Category 5, sustainable and resilient communities. And category 6, transportation policy, program development, and implementation. Next slide, please. The firms shown on this slide have been issued a notice of intent to award in the designated categories shown here. We have awarded a total of 12 firms across all 6 categories, with some firms that have been awarded in multiple categories. When jurisdictions use the on-call, they'll be required to compete the work to the firms shown in each category. To date, we have successfully negotiated 11 of the 12 contracts, sent out about half the contracts for signature, and are waiting on insurance compliance for the remaining contracts. Next slide, please. Again, the intent of the on-call was for Sandag to conduct the procurement on behalf of the local jurisdictions. Now that Sandag has established a bench of qualified firms and we're close to executing contracts, jurisdictions will be able to access the on-call to compete their projects through a task order solicitation process. After a firm has been selected through the task order solicitation process, the jurisdictions will be responsible for issuing the firms a separate contract and task order to authorize the work. Sandag has negotiated rates and classifications with each of the on-call firms, which will be provided to the jurisdictions once negotiations are finalized with all 12 firms. In regards to the process, we request that jurisdictions notify the Sandag contract manager, Tueri Fiola, if you intend to use the on-call. In this request, we'll need to know the estimated cost or budget of the project, the timeline of the project, and a summary of the scope of work. Sandag staff will review these details and determine whether there's enough solicitation capacity remaining, that the project schedules within the 5-year term, and that the project scope falls within the scope of one of the 6 categories of service. Once Sandag staff authorizes the use of the on-call, jurisdictions will be responsible for soliciting their projects to the firms in their respective categories. Next slide, please. A few additional items to note: the on-call master contracts include FTA, FHWA, and repass-through provisions. Part of the reason jurisdictions will need to execute their own contracts and task orders is due to the possibility of jurisdictions using other funding sources that were not anticipated in Sandag's master on-call contracts. Additionally, Sandag has established a 0 to 25% DBE goal range for federally funded task orders. If your jurisdiction will be using FTA, FHWA, or other federal funds, a DBE goal will need to be set for each task order. And the last note is regarding engineering work. Any engineering work solicited under this on-call should be conceptual in nature and incidental to the purpose of these on-call contracts, which is intended to be a professional service planning contract. Any future design or engineering work is subject to a future procurement that is not administered under this on-call and shall be solicited separately by the jurisdictions following A&E and Brooks Act requirements. Next slide, please. As far as next steps, as mentioned in the previous slides, we're close to executing the on-call contracts. Anticipate all contracts will be executed by the end of this month. Once the contracts are executed, we will provide jurisdictions with a toolkit that includes the scope of work for each category, negotiated rates, the summary of firms selected for each category and contact information, task order document and task order solicitation templates, and detailed guidelines and instructions on how to use the on-call. Next slide, please. And with that, that concludes my presentation. At this time, I'm happy to take any questions, or if you'd like to contact me directly, I can be reached at the email shown on this slide. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Brittany, for that presentation. I'll open up to any member comments. Not seeing any member comments. Great, thank you again for that presentation. Certainly look forward to getting the opportunity to work with these consultants. I had the opportunity of sitting on the panel that hired them, so there's some really qualified teams that I think will provide great resources both for Sandag and for member agencies. So thank you again, and not seeing any comments from the working group members. It looks like there is somebody who does want to make a comment. I apologize on my phone. I can't tell if that's a member of the committee or of the public.
Yes, we have one hand up from a member of the public that would like to make a public comment. We have
Thank-
Tim Violet.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Very good. Thank you for taking my comment. I was very interested here. I apologize for my naivety and whether these questions fit this particular thing. As I'm unfamiliar with the rationale for the consulting, it probably was covered in other previous discussions. But as I look at this, I'm wondering, is this for the purpose of creating more housing units in the long run? And if so, how many units would this kind of activity hope to contribute to? And it appears to me, thinking about the language in this bidding, is there wisdom to subsidize? Is this subsidizing contractors as opposed to home buyers? Is this another middleman in the loop that you have to jump through in terms of trying to get affordable housing? Is it to help the local communities with their efforts, or procuring funding from other sources? And I'd be interested if there were a breakdown as the program goes along and information is provided, whether financing costs and tax costs for the different areas and proposals that might come up as to affordability and cost of living in those areas that might be impacted. Thank you for taking my comment.
Thank you for your comment, and I would, I guess, recommend contacting staff to follow up, but I will just say that these are for planning consultants to work on regional planning, transportation related issues, smart growth, land use, as well as for member cities in the county to use for planning purposes to support changes to land use plans or transportation plans, to support the implementation of the regional plan. So again, I'd refer you to staff if you want to do any more follow-up with them directly. Thank you for the public comment. Let's go ahead and move on, assuming there's no other public comments on item number 3. Item number 4, Housing Accelerated Program Updates. Sandex staff presenting is Sam Solis. Sam's going to provide an overview of the Housing Accelerated Program and current work efforts. Again, after questions, we'll open it up for member comments, and then we'll follow that with many comments from the public. Go ahead, Sam. It's all yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sam Solis. I am a regional housing planner here at Sandag, and today I will be presenting an update on the Housing Acceleration Program and all the cool things that we've been doing here at Sandag. Next slide, please. The numbers on the screen here are a reminder of ambitious goals that we have for the region. We need over 171,000 new homes by 2029. And while our state target for GHG reduction is 19%, our regional plan calls for a 20% reduction by 2035. As we have taken a bold approach to develop our regional plan, we also need to look at bold approaches, how the housing and climate crisis in our region intersect, and find transformative solutions that result in more homes being built and reducing our regional VMT reduction. Next slide, please. So with that context in mind, let's take a look at Sandex Housing Acceleration Program over the past 2 years. In July of 2020, the Sandex Board of Directors adopted the 6-cycle RENA plan. In that same year, MPOs across the state were allocated REAP funds to develop a housing program in alignment with their regional plan and sustainable community strategies. In November 2021, the Sandex staff provided an update to the Sandex Board of Directors on the Housing Acceleration Program. In the same meeting, the Board of Directors authorized staff to release the first cycle of the Housing Acceleration Grant Program in conjunction with the Smart Growth Incentive Grant Program as well. Collectively, both programs released $6 million to support local jurisdictions. In early December of 2021, the Sandex Board of Directors adopted the 2021 Regional Plan that reimagines how we live, work, and travel throughout the San Diego region. In mid-December, the Sandex Board of Directors established the Regional Equitable Housing Subcommittee, a subcommittee of the board that is intended to lead discussions and identify voluntary and innovative incentive-based housing approaches that address the housing needs that are unique to the San Diego region. In March 2022, the Sandex Board of Directors awarded 7 HAP grants to local jurisdictions, and by now, our business associate should have reached out and coordinated with local jurisdictions. And lastly, the state is preparing to allocate a second round of REAP, or what we're calling REAP 2.0, and that is essentially to expand our housing acceleration program and implement our regional plan. REAP 2.0 includes a competitive grant program for agencies like Sandex and other agencies in the region to be eligible to apply for. Next slide, please. The REAP 1.0 program, Sandex was awarded $6.8 million, and those funds must be spent between January 2021 and December 2023. And this program is more so intended to develop a program and policy focus that focuses on planning activities related to housing acceleration and helping local jurisdictions achieve their 6-cycle RENA allocation. REAP 2.0, on the other hand, builds on the success of REAP 1.0, but expands its focus to help MPOs like Sandex implement the regional plan and their sustainable community strategies. This broader focus allows for Sandex to expand its implementation activities that include infill development, housing for all, which also includes infrastructure, equity, VMT reductions, and addressing the negative economic impacts of COVID-19 in disadvantaged communities. Again, Sandex is eligible for $43 million, and awards must be spent by June of 2026. As of yesterday, Sandex submitted our 10% advance application, and we are expected to be receiving $4.3 million, which will primarily be used for education and outreach. Next slide, please. To get a better understanding of local jurisdictions, Sandex staff sought out to interview our 19 local jurisdictions. Of the 19 jurisdictions, 14 jurisdictions participated in interviews for us to hear and understand barriers to accelerating housing production. In those interviews, we heard some common themes, and some of those were the lack of vacant or developable land, lack of staff capacity to process new application, the high cost of infill development, insufficient funding for affordable housing, and within our coastal cities, the conflicts between coastal zone regulations and new and emerging housing requirements. Sandex considered these barriers in the development of our housing acceleration program activities under REAP 1.0. Next slide, please. The Housing Acceleration Program has three main areas of focus, and that is our local jurisdiction support, data analysis and policy resources, and regional initiatives. Under local jurisdiction support, this includes our grant program for local jurisdictions. Approximately half of our REAP 1.0 funds, so about 3 million, were put out for HAP grant call for projects. As mentioned earlier, Sandex awarded 7 HAP grants to local jurisdictions. Our REAP funding is also being used to provide technical assistance to our local jurisdictions, and as well to develop our sustainable communities on call so that Sandex and as well our local jurisdictions could tap into. And I won't go much more into detail as Brittany just discussed the on call. Under data analysis and policy resources, some efforts are currently underway, and that is Sandex will be developing a housing policy and planning tool, that will have various housing related data and will also serve as a one-stop shop with technical assistant resources. Sandex is also looking to conduct a regional anti-displacement study. And one of the early deliverables of this specific area was our pro-housing best practices that is live in our website. And lastly, under regional initiatives, Sandex deployed a housing policy forum that I believe many folks here attended. And we're also deploying our housing policy leadership academy. And these are really efforts where we're coming together as a region to share information and make sure we're all informed about state legislation and things along those lines. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, we're looking to develop a housing policy and planning tool, and that is more so to develop robust housing data packages that support local jurisdiction in the implementation of their 6-cycle housing element and any future studies Sandex may conduct. This tool as well we're looking at doing affordable housing developments, that case studies that are unique to the San Diego region and are representative of every subregion of the county. And lastly, we're also looking to develop the tool itself that will host, that will be able to provide data and spatial analysis, as well as host technical assistance. On that note, I am going to kick it over to my colleague, Nikki, to discuss technical assistance.
Thanks, Sam. Hi, everybody. My name is Nikki Zanchetta, and I'm a regional planner here at Sandex, and I'm helping with the Housing Acceleration Program, Technical Assistance Program for our local jurisdictions. And there's 4 main components of this Technical Assistance Program we're looking to start up. And this is all coming from conversations with all of you about the kinds of needs that you need at the local level to implement your housing elements, and hoping to be in coordination with the 2021 regional plan. So the first part of this are trainings and webinars. This can be more of a region-wide trainings that are specific in topics that are going to help local jurisdictions, staff members, and also elected officials and the public to better understand what we need to do in order to get housing elements implemented. And these can be more technical trainings, or they can be more broad informational webinars as well. And we also have templates and toolkits. These are more tangible things for technical assistance. So sample ordinances, sample PowerPoints, and for toolkits, those would be a little bit longer documents, maybe like something we've heard people mention objective design standards or permit ready ADUs that we can use region wide. So those types of physical templates and toolkits that jurisdictions can take and customize to their local cities, but it's coordinated regionally. We're also looking to start some legislation tracking and interpretation. So helping to understand what kinds of legislation, housing legislation is in the queue at the state level, and how that's going to affect the cities in our region, and how we can best prepare our region and our cities for changes in state law. We saw a big change and need for kind of regional leadership with SB 9. So we want to try to be more prepared and incorporate that into our technical assistance program going forward. And also a big thing that we heard from a lot of the local jurisdiction staff is that there's just a need for local staffing assistance just across the board. And that is really flexible, can be subject matter expertise for housing elements or just helping to have an extra set of hands at the local staffing level. I do want to mention that all of these are fairly broad. We don't necessarily have any specific layout in mind or very specific tools or templates in mind for how we're going to set this up. We want to continue collaboration with all of the local jurisdictions to make sure that we are adjusting and pivoting where needed for local assistance, and we'll continue meetings and workshops and communications at the local level to make sure that we're meeting your needs with this technical assistance program. And with that, I'll pass it back to Sam.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So a lot of the work that we are doing here with the Housing Acceleration Program is intended to support our local jurisdictions to complete and implement their 6-cycle housing element. Housing elements for the San Diego region were due about a year ago, and we currently have about 7 jurisdictions with certified housing elements and 12 jurisdictions that are working extremely hard to achieve certification. This cycle has been very difficult to achieve certification through HCD. And we really just wanted to bring this up in your meeting today so we can have a conversation about this and hear from you all if there are other things that here at Sandag we can be doing to support you to get to that finish line. We feel that implementation is so important that we want to get you all past the planning process and allow for your staff to focus work on work that is going to help us achieve our goals. Some of the things that we've brainstormed is possibly having HCD give a presentation on common issues within housing elements and possibly hosting office hours to chat specifically on issues related to housing elements. But we can chat more about that towards the tail end of this, this presentation. Next slide, please. Moving on to the Regional Equitable Housing Subcommittee. Next slide, please. The Regional Equitable Housing Subcommittee is a subcommittee of the board and is currently chaired by Supervisor Tara Lawson-Remer, vice chaired by Mayor Gloria, and the rest of the membership is on screen. Currently, the subcommittee has met about 3 times and are working and have made steady progress in their work plan. Next slide, please. The subcommittee of the board has 3 areas of focus, and that is to inform the development of the housing acceleration strategy, along with making recommendations to the Sandag board, exploring financing mechanisms such as a regional housing finance agency, and lastly, exploring potential revenue opportunities to accelerate housing production. Next slide, please. The Housing Subcommittee is working on developing a housing acceleration program strategy that will help define the priorities and the path forward for our region. And this starts with the 5 Ps. These are more so policy areas that align with the state's approach on the housing crisis, our RENA plan, and local jurisdictions' housing elements. The 5 Ps include produce housing for all, and that is to support and implement policies that increase housing production of all kinds in locations that enhance the quality of life, preserve vulnerable housing, and that is to support proactive strategies that preserve at-risk affordable housing, promote equity, inclusion, and sustainability, and that is more so to implement housing solutions that address the legacy of inequality and housing and ensure that safe, healthy, and accessible and inclusive housing opportunities are available to everyone. Protect tenants, so support renters by informing them of their legal rights and creating protections to minimize economic evictions and unsustainable rent increases. And lastly, prevent displacement. So implement policies that prevent residents from harmful outcomes of displacement resulting from improvements to neighborhood amenities. The Housing Acceleration Program strategy should be completed by this summer and will include specific action items to guide Sandag's Housing Acceleration Program over the next few years. Next slide, please. As part of the subcommittee's work plan, they are looking at the formation of a regional housing finance agency. And with the leadership of Supervisor Tara Lawson-Remer, legislation has been introduced. Senate Bill 1105 would establish the San Diego Regional Equitable and Environmentally Friendly Affordable Housing Agency. And here on screen is a brief timeline. State Senator Ben Weso authored and introduced SB 1105. In March 24th, the bill was referred to the Senate Housing Committee, where it was heard and passed. On April 20th, the bill was later referred to the Senate Governance and Finance Committee, where it was heard and passed. On May 27th will be the last day to hear Senate floor votes. And in June, it'll flip over to the Assembly, and the bill will include the next round of legislation and include our local discussion and feedback. Currently, Senator Ben Weso and Supervisor Tara Lawson-Remer are seeking input on this legislation and are working in the coming weeks to solicit additional feedback. I want to introduce this to you briefly as part of the presentation, and we're planning to have more in-depth discussions about the bill at future meetings. Next slide, please. Moving now on to REAP 2.0. Next slide, please. So the REAP 2.0 program has very similar goals and objectives of the 2021 regional plan and its sustainable community strategies, and that is to accelerate infill development, realize multimodal communities, shift travel behavior, increase transit ridership, and address the negative economic impacts of COVID-19. HCD and its collaborative partners have set out these objectives for REAP 2.0 funding. However, here at Sandag, we'll be working with various working groups, including this one, to see what this means for the San Diego region while using our regional plan as a guide. Next slide, please. Here on screen is a brief timeline of REAP 2.0. In July, Assembly Bill 140 established REAP 2.0, allowing for MPOs like Sandag to be eligible for. In January, Sandag was able to apply for a 10% advance, about 4.3 million. From February, we have begun to kick off our education and outreach for REAP 2.0 by presenting to working groups like the TWIG. We will be having many opportunities where throughout the year to get education and provide outreach to many jurisdictions, and this will help support our developing our full application, and that is by the December timeframe, and all funds must be expended by June 2026. So we're roughly looking at a 3-year timeframe to implement this program. Next slide, please. Some of the next steps that are clear action items to Sandag are to continue our ongoing housing acceleration program activities from REAP 1.0, and that is like our housing policy planning tool, technical assistance, our Housing Policy Leadership Academy, and so on. The subcommittee will continue their work on the Regional Housing Finance Agency legislation. Sandag will continue to deploy education and outreach to inform REAP 2.0. We will begin to prepare our call for projects, our HAP Cycle 2, that will include capital. And lastly, apply for REAP 2.0, the net remaining funds for the region. Chair, that concludes my presentation, and I am happy to answer any questions. And here's our contact information as well.
Great, thanks, Sam. That was quite a comprehensive presentation. I felt like that was 5 items rolled into one. So thank you for that very deep dive and in-depth presentation. Just want to, before we move on to member comments, I just want to ask the TWIG members for any comments or questions, if they would like Sandag to help facilitate a meeting or office hours with HCD. Also, just keep in mind, if you would like to have a future agenda item on a TWIG meeting regarding SB 1105 as it continues to move forward, just want to throw that out there as some possible things you may want to think about as you formulate any questions or comments. That I'll open it up to members of the working group. Looks like you've covered a lot of area there, so I have a feeling probably folks are probably digesting that. And is this presentation going to be available either on the website or something you can email out to everybody?
Yeah, it'll be available on the link where we found this meeting. We can also send it out as well.
All right.
This is Tueri, really quick, just on the coordination on putting together something for open hours with HCD. I think we can still work toward, even though I know everyone's absorbing a lot of the information that was shared today, but Sam and our team can reach out and try and put something on the calendar and schedule that for those jurisdictions who may want to participate. So if maybe those who are on the call don't think that they're the right person to indicate, desire to be on that open hours and discussion with HCD, we can do some individual reaching out and schedule that for you.
Well, I will make the suggestion to consider placing SB 1105 as it moves forward as a future future agenda item for information, if it's appropriate at the bill, as it still continues to move forward. That I think would be helpful to get some more information. It seems like a interesting approach and probably something that we should keep an eye on. So thank you for that. Just want to check one last time if there are any comments from members of the working group. All right,
just
seeing
like
none,
to,
let's open it up.
Point out that last night our council did re-adopt our housing element. We had received a conditional finding of compliance by HCD. So today I'll be resubmitting that to HCD, hopefully for certification. Now, the one issue that we have is the requirement to complete the rezones by April 15th of this year. I'm not sure if any of you have engaged with HCD, but it would seem that it would affect most of us in that we wouldn't really be able to meet that. And so the concern is, like, for applying for grants, would it disqualify us, basically, since we haven't completed the rezones? Do any of you know what the official stance from HCD is on that particular matter?
Staff, are you able to answer that question?
I can share what I know, and I see Darlene has her hand up. I know Oceanside is also in a similar situation. So I'll maybe see Darlene if you want to weigh in first on your experience.
Yeah, thanks so much, Allison. We're in exactly the same boat because of our timing of our cycle. We are kind of anxious to get certification, but we were asked to do rezones, and we're currently updating our general plan. And so we weren't anticipating including those until the general plan was approved, which is next year. So we're really concerned about the ability to be considered for grants in the interim. So we're in exactly the same boat. And we had this really good meeting with Sam and Allison about a month or so ago, seeking assistance. But it's good to hear that other cities are feeling the same way.
I will then make the suggestion and just chiming in, and if we could maybe ask Paul McDougall or his staff from HCD if they would be able to join us for a future meeting.
Yeah, I think, Tate, if I can, we wanted to hear from the group, if all jurisdictions would be interested, we could bring an item to the TWIG, or if just cities who are still kind of in limbo with this bill, we could organize a more focused conversation around that as well with HCD. So we have some options, but want to make sure we can help facilitate those conversations with HCD. I also wanted to note that there is a bill, wanted to make sure it was on folks' radar, AB 1830, that maybe we could bring back at a future meeting too, once we know the status, if it's moving forward, but that would allow for a bit more time on those rezones. It was a 1-year requirement that AB 1398 established, and this would make it an 18-month requirement. So it's not a huge amount of time, but it may be just enough to help a lot of our jurisdictions. So I wanted to make sure that was on your radar too.
Well, great. Maybe if I can make a suggestion, maybe if you're able to just send an email out to members and maybe just do a straw poll and see maybe if there's any interest for that, that we could consider that as a future item. Certainly if Oceanside and Santee want to have individual meetings with HCD, then that seems appropriate, but also happy if it's beneficial for others who may be in that situation or just of interest of topic to hear about it. I'm certainly open to putting that on the agenda as well. And just in case if there's any other questions we may have for HCD staff, I think that's always appropriate to ask them if they can attend. But again, see how perhaps people respond if you send out a straw poll and see. All right, let me ask one more time if there's any additional comments from any of the TWIG members.
Yeah, Karen had her hand up.
Yes, good afternoon, Karen Brindley, City of Del Mar. I just wanted to offer a thank you to Sandag staff for facilitating some action with HCD. We were able to coordinate a meeting with them and have been somewhat successful as far as continuing to engage. So I just wanted to say thank you, and would also support any future like office hours that could be arranged so that there could be some standing times for that level of accessibility. We have several comments that we need to work through with them and are eager to continue that process. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other comments from members of the TWIG? All right, not hearing or seeing any. Let's move on to public comments. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on item number 5? I'm sorry, item number 4.
Yeah, we do have one hand up from Tim Bilish.
Yes, thank you again, Tim Bilish and Del Mar. I just had a quick question and was wondering if there will be reportable metrics in place for the meeting of the 5 policy goals of the committee. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you for that comment. Allison, is there anything you wanted to briefly respond back to that?
Yeah, I can briefly respond that particularly with our REAP 2.0 funding, there are a number of metrics that we'll be gathering and reporting through that program. So, and those very much align with those 5 different policy goals. So yes, there will be that reporting taking place.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to item number 5. Just a minute, having a technical glitch here. Item number 5, working group restructuring update. We'll have a presentation from Allison, and she'll be providing an update on the formation of the Sustainable Communities Working Group and its draft work plan, which was included as an attachment on the meeting agenda. All right, Allison, I'll turn it over to you to give the presentation.
Thank you. And I actually don't have slides today, so just me talking today, but wanted to make sure I provided an update. So we've talked at prior meetings about the restructuring of our working groups and that we'll be forming a Sustainable Communities Working Group. And we have, over the last couple months, worked to develop our membership list for this working group. So hopefully many of you saw that, or many of you are being appointed to the new working group. There are still several jurisdictions that have not appointed members, so we'll be following up with you individually. You'll likely see that coming from either Antoinette Meyer or Cami Leone. So just so if you see those names, wanted to make sure those were out there. The second thing I wanted to talk about was last time we discussed this with the TWIG, we heard your concerns about, losing kind of the technical working group forum that you all really enjoy having, and that this transition to the Sustainable Communities Working Group was kind of problematic for having this group. And so one of the things we're working on doing is through the Housing Acceleration Program technical assistance that Nikki was presenting on, we're including different venues through that work effort to bring you all or your more housing focused staff at your jurisdiction, bring you together through those forums to have the really technical discussions that you want to have, at least on the housing side, since we know there's so much work to be done. And so what we've proposed in there is to do sub-regional meetings. So that's less than a quorum of the TWIG. You all can meet. We can really focus on sub-regional issues around housing. We heard from many of you that seemed like a good approach. And then the second thing we can do are some broader regional webinars so that we can still bring folks together. If it turns out we have a quorum of the TWIG, then or the Sustainable Communities Working Group, then we'll just notice it as such and be clear about what the focus of that meeting is. So I hope that that's, responsive to the feedback that we got. As we go along, we can adjust and change course if you feel like you don't quite have the right meetings. Okay, third thing, the draft work plan is attached to your agenda. It's very similar to what we talked about at a prior meeting. Really, the focus of this group is on land use and housing issues, climate and habitat issues. So that work plan has a little bit more meat on the bones there. Ultimately, we'll bring that draft to the newly formed working group at their first meeting to review, and they'll finalize the work plan. Other thing is that the Sustainable Communities Working Group will be chaired by a member of our regional planning committee. So we're working to get that appointment made. And then we're anticipating the first meeting of this group to be in July, and it'll be on a every other month schedule. So anticipating meetings in July, September, and November through this year. So we'll be working on scheduling those soon as well. So that's my update on the working groups, and happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you for that update. Are there any questions or comments from members of the technical working group? All right, not seeing or hearing of any. Just again, can you just state when do you expect that to be in place?
We're expecting in July.
July. Okay,
So
great.
we anticipate June will likely be the last official meeting of the TWIG, just to make that clear too. And then that's around the same time that our technical assistance program will really be ramping up. So we'll be having other meetings starting in that July timeframe as well to really dive in on housing issues.
Right. All right, seeing no questions or comments or hands raised for members of.
I do see one hand, Tate, that just went up from Megan Openshaw.
Yeah, go ahead, Megan.
Thanks. Quick question. Do you happen to know if the meetings will be in person or if we continue to utilize, Zoom or other virtual meeting forums?
Good question. So our current direction from our board is to do hybrid meetings. So for this group, we anticipate doing hybrid. So members of the public and staff and any members of the working group that want to attend in person can, and we'll still have the virtual option available. I will note that, as things change, that's up to the discretion of our board if they at some point change to have Brown Act meetings return to in-person. For the housing focused groups, we're anticipating those to be virtual for now. That's kind of what we sensed most of you would prefer. But if we want to meet in person for those meetings, that's flexible. That's up to the staff that are participating.
I just add, Allison, but members of the public, even, it is my understanding that even with the hybrid, or if we were to change from hybrid to in-person, we would always allow members of the public to join any of the Brown Act meetings, virtual or in person.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from members of the working group? All right, not seeing any. Do we have any public comments on this item?
No, I don't see any hands raised.
All right. And then let's see, let's talk about, could segue into our next item, upcoming meetings and future topics. The next TWIG meeting is going to be scheduled for Thursday, June 9th, and it's at 1:15. Potential topics include discussion of the Sandex Series 14 forecast, mobility hubs, and I would open it up to any other future topics. I guess along with that, if inviting HCD or having any updates on the bills that we had referenced in our previous discussion. As well as I'd also, if anybody wants to feel strongly about meeting in person or having a hybrid meeting, now's your opportunity. That I'll open it up to public, or open it up to working group comments and questions. All right, not seeing any. It looks like we will continue to meet virtually, and look forward to staff making presentations on the items that I mentioned and possibly others. If you have any suggestions, feel free to go ahead and contact Allison directly. With that, I would ask if there are any public comments on our item number 6, future meeting topics. Not seeing any public comments. Let's move to adjournment. It's 2:16, and I am going to adjourn the meeting. With that, thank you everybody for attending. See you next month.
Thank you.